Hi there, this is Laura Dovalo back with another interactive card. This one features some new products like the Raccoon Cutie Die-namics. When you move the pulp tab back and forth, it does a little happy dance, moving its arms, tail, and especially eyes. I tweaked a simple mechanism that I saw on a Japanese YouTube channel and adapted it to my idea. There's a link to that video clip in the description box where you can also find a list of my favorite things products that I used for this card. I'm starting with some partial die cutting to make the body of the raccoon a little bit longer. As you can see, I've placed my upper cutting pad away from the neck area of the die. This means that it doesn't cut all the way, and I can finish doing that with my scissors. I only need it to be about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters taller than the original piece. After die cutting all of the body parts of the raccoon in black, white and grey cardstock, I'm now using copic markers to add some quick texture and shading. I'm starting with the darker colors and finishing with the lighter ones, using feathered strokes to try to make the paper look like fur. I've even worked on the white pieces, although you can hardly see it in the video. For the mechanism, I used the inside pieces of the two smallest dies from the Spin and Slide Channel's Die-namics. They are quite thin, so I layered them to make them sturdier. Next, I punched the hole through the longer piece and sanded the edges of it. I really need to get myself one of those 1/16 of an inch hole punches. I also layered two pieces that I cut with one of the dies from the Interactive Pull Tabs Die-namics out of Jellybean green cardstock. I used the same color for the ground, and here I'm stamping a fun sentiment from the Party Penguin stamp set in extreme black hybrid ink. In hindsight, some white embossing would have really popped on such a dark color. My strip was 4 1/4 of an inch or 10.5 centimeters wide and 1.5 inches or almost 4 centimeters tall, but I didn't cut it all the way yet. I needed to leave a slight hump there, about the same size as the raccoon's body, to be able to attach the mechanism. You'll see what I mean in a moment. Okay, so the measurement from the edge of the panel to the hump, or whatever you can call it, ended up being 2 1/4 of an inch or 5.8 centimeters tall. And here you can see me finishing the cut with my trusted scissors. Off camera, I shortened the pull tab to 4.5 inches or 11.5 centimeters, and now I'm aligning it with the ground strip and marking the spot where I'm going to punch a hole for the mechanism. I'm also going to give the raccoon some new eyes with my 1/2 inch circle punch. I wasn't sure if it would be possible to go through 3 layers of thick cardstock without breaking anything, but it worked out fine. Next time I'll do it layer by layer though. When I was preparing the linkages earlier, I forgot to add a second hole to the larger piece to be able to link it to the pull strip. Only one vital element left before we can start assembling the mechanism. We need to make a piece of white cardstock that goes behind the eyes of the raccoon. It needs to be big enough so that the eyes look good while it's moving, but small enough so that you can't see it from the sides. It'll make sense in a moment. For now, just trace the head onto the paper and cut the piece about 1/4 of an inch smaller all around. As you can see, this raccoon has a black mask on the front of its head and a white one on the back of it. Let's continue. The first thing that we need to do is to attach the pull tab to the green panel, and I'm doing it with 2 narrow strips of paper and some score tape. I'm gluing the first one about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters from the right edge of the panel. These strips are actually called sleeves and they should be longer, wrap around the pull tab completely and then be attached to the panel, but I wasn't exactly sure where they should go and thought it would be easier to move them if necessary. Before moving on to the second one, let's go ahead and attach the larger linkage to the pull tab with the help of a mini brad. It should be quite loose so that the eyes can move freely. I've already glued the second strip in its place, about 3/4 of an inch or 2 centimeters from the left edge of the panel, and now I'm going to adhere the second linkage piece. The purpose of this one is to move the raccoon's arms. There's nothing difficult about this step. We just need to make sure not to cover the whole of the vertical linkage, since we're using it to insert a brad and linking the mechanism to the panel. As a recap, the first brad attaches the linkage to the pull tab, and the second one is to attach the linkage to the green panel. So it's time to grab my handy piercing tool again and get to work. I'm holding the linkage in place while I'm using the hole as a guide to pierce the hump on the green panel. Now I just grab a mini brad and carefully link the two pieces. Before moving on, we need to test it to see that everything is moving correctly. And it's looking good. In this card, the pull tab moves very little, but still creates a fun effect. Later on, I'll show you how to limit that movement. Here, I'm almost finished adhering the arms in their places with some thin foam squares, and then I can move on to the raccoon's body, and finally, its head. I'm just placing a couple of foam squares on the edge because the eye mechanism requires a lot of space, as you can see in a moment. Remember that white mask that we cut by hand earlier? This is where it has to go, right between the head die cut and the blue linkage element. I'm temporarily going to adhere it with tape to see if it's placed correctly before going ahead and gluing it definitely. Now we just have to snip off any extra paper that's showing on the sides when moving the raccoon. We're also going to limit the movement of the pull tab so that the eyes are always visible. We just need to glue a couple of strips of cardstock to the pull tab, both to the left, like I'm doing right now, as to the right of the strips that are keeping it in place. It's easier to show you than to explain it. As soon as we add a couple of black enamel dots to the center of those white eyes, the cuteness factor of the raccoon goes through the roof. Now most of the work is done. Here's my pathetic try of showing you how I added glue to the linkage almost off screen. I also managed to add the raccoon's big and fluffy tail, although in hindsight it would have probably looked more balanced to the left since the pull tab is on the right side. Part 2 of substituting the tape for glue, and this time I did a better job at staying on screen. I used one of the stencils from the card-sized Confetti set and Distress Oxide inks to decorate my 8.5 by 5.5 card base. The result is really cute, and I'm sure I'll use this stencil many times, especially for birthday or celebration-themed cards. I've added strips of black foam tape to the back of my panel, and now I'm going to glue it to my card base. I find it easier to do if I make the card stand up. A couple of thick foam dots behind the ears, and our card is almost finished. I previously added a layer of glossy accents to the raccoon's nose, and now I'm gluing it in place. I could see a little bit of white on the edges of the eyes, so I grabbed a black memento marker and a piece of cardstock to give them a nice finish. This tiny detail concludes today's video. Let's see it in action one more time. Thank you so much for watching, and please feel free to leave any comments or questions. I'll make sure to answer them. Bye bye! Hasta luego!